Hi, and welcome to 60 for 30, a budget Magic the Gathering project that usually looks to get you a playable 60-card deck for right around $30. However, today we're going to step a little bit away from Standard and Modern and take a look at one of the most popular Magic formats, Commander, and how to do it on a budget. Commander, put simply, is a ridiculous format where you play with 100-card decks, 99 cards plus your commander. Your commander starts the game in a command zone. You can cast it as though it was in your hand. You can only run one of each card in your deck, which is part of what makes it a great budget format, because you see that card that's $5 and you're like, I only need one of those. It's not like I need a play set, so you drop the $5 and you can build it over time because commander doesn't rotate, so you can slowly sink money into it. There are lots of good budget options, especially in the land department for Commander. In this video, I'm going to go over my 4 favorite commanders to do on a budget for each of the 5 colors and each of the 10 2-color combinations. I'm sticking to those because once you start adding 3, 4, 5 colors to a deck, the land base gets more expensive and harder to work with. So we're going to stick with 1 and 2 color commanders. And as far as budget commanders, I'm trying to stay in about the $2 to $3 range, but a lot of these commanders are closer to 50-cent cards, and only a few of them I think are pushing that upper limit of $3 cards. So, without further ado, let's look at where we should start if we want to play Commander on a budget. Commander products made by Wizards. So I will do a real video on this, and I will go through my favorite commanders, but every year Wizards has started putting out a sealed Commander product that varies. They put out different decks every year, but it usually costs around $35. And they're just the best products you can get for your money. It's a playable commander deck with your friends. They can do nut stuff. They're upgradable over time, and it's just, you can't really start in a better place than one of these commander products. However, the downside of these commander products is that you have to play these commander products, and you can't put that much originality into it since you're playing a pre-bought deck. So if this isn't what you want, although this is the best way to do it, take a look at any of the following commanders. Starting in white, we have SRAM, which is a great commander if you're going to be playing the card types listed on his card, Rs, equipments, vehicles, because you're going to be drawing lots of cards. So he's great for popping off if you're playing an equipment heavy deck. Some enchantments, kind of Voltron-y, although he's not really built for that. Voltron, if you're not familiar, means making one creature super duper huge and then killing people with it. But if you're interested in auras, equipments, and vehicles, he's just built-in card advantage. You'll notice there are some themes in the commanders that I've picked. For the most part, they either cost very little mana, because if your commander dies in a game, it's sent back to the command zone and it costs 2 more mana the next time you want to play it. So if you start as a 2-mana commander, you're only up to 4 mana after it dies once, so you get a lot of use out of them. And then the other thing that you'll see a lot is that they have some built-in protection as much as possible, so that they're hard to remove from the board. Which is things to look at that make good commanders. Kemba kind of fits in the same shell as SRAM if you're looking for equipment. Kemba is one of the classic commanders for equipment. You just stack them all on Kemba, you make a giant cat creature token army, and go to town. Odric is great if you want to be playing a deck that drops a lot of creatures on the board, because once you have those out and you're attacking with him and 3 other creatures, you just get to decide how combat goes. You can make your creatures not be blocked, you can make your opponent's best creatures block your creatures that'll kill them. You just get to be in charge at that point. And then Anafenza, again, playing lots of creatures. She's cheap, 2 mana, and she just gives a lot of value from those counters that you'll be bolstering, which will make your smaller creatures bigger and bigger and bigger. In blue, we have an artifact-themed commander, Padim. The artifacts of hexproof. There's a ton of removal, especially artifact removal in Commander. And commanders that generate card advantage are just generally good, so the fact that by sticking him on the board, if you're playing an artifact-heavy deck, you will likely have the artifact with the highest mana cost. You'll be drawing lots of cards. Arcanus, tap, draw 3 cards. That's pretty much what he does. If you get to stick him on a board, he's going to be getting you way ahead in card advantage. Azami, Again, card advantage is a big deal. So if you're playing a mono blue wizard deck, you just play her, tap wizard, she can tap herself with this ability, draw cards, instant speed, you can do it on your opponent's end step, however you want to do it, it's pretty cool. And then Talrand, one of my classic favorite cards, 4 mana, just stick this guy out there, and you're playing a blue deck, so lots of counter spells, lots of draw spells, and as you're countering spells and drawing spells, you're just generating 2/2 flying creatures the whole time, which can add up to a lot pretty quickly. In black, I'm going to slow this down and talk about Yahenni, because I think this is my favorite single-colored commander available, and she's not expensive. She only costs 3 mana, she comes out early. She has haste, so she affects the board immediately. Whenever a creature your opponent controls dies, she gets bigger. I've won games with a 27/27 Yahenni because in Commander, lots of creatures hit the board, there are lots of board wipes that destroy all the creatures on the board, and she has an ability, sacrifice another creature that you control, Yahenni gains indestructible until the end of turn. So you play Yahenni, everyone's got a few creatures out, someone plays a board wipe, you just sacrifice one of your creatures that's going to die anyway in response. Yahenni survives the board wipe as like a 15/15 creature, and you're great. She just does so much. She's a free sacrifice outlet. If you're playing something with sacrifice synergies, like an aristocrat style deck, a combo deck where you just need to have a sack outlet, she provides that. There's really nothing that Yahenni doesn't do that you... Like, she does everything you would want a commander to ever do. So big thumbs up for Yahenni. Bond 2 similar, indestructible means that it's really hard to remove from the board. Your opponents need exile effects. And the activated ability to sacrifice another creature can be very synergistic in black decks. You get a scry out of it and you drain your opponents and gain some life. Kuro Pitlord is an interesting one because you will rarely cast him at 9 mana. This is not a guy that you're going to be like, ooh, I need to get him out as soon as possible so I can win. But his second ability, pay 1 life, target creature gets -1/-1 until the end of turn. If you're playing a life gain heavy black deck and you are able to land this guy, you can remove whatever you want from the board. If one of your opponents has Avacyn out, 8/8 makes all of the permanents they control indestructible. You just pay 8 life and Avacyn gets -8/-8 and is gone. There's really no creature that Kuro can't take care of, especially if you're gaining lots of life, or just in Commander you start at 40, so you have a lot of resource to work with there. And then Drana, maybe if you're playing a vampire deck, this would be cool, or just really, she's a flying creature that you can use her ability to kill an opponent's creature that's important, and make her huge and fly in for commander damage. Commander damage, each player starts the game with 40 life, but commander damage, if your commander deals 21 damage to a player, they're dead. So it's not that hard to kill someone in 2 attacks with Drana if you get to that stage of the game. Red's an interesting color because I feel like the cards that are good in Commander for red are a little narrower. Red strategies I think are generally artifact themed, which is why Duretti is cool for red. He was actually one of the pre-made commanders, but he's cheap money-wise. He can be your commander. He's a planeswalker, which is a different angle to take when you're playing commander. He has a ton of synergies with artifacts. I have trouble with red in commander as a color because it's hard without any life gain. Red has access to, I want to say no life gain. There's some artifacts that can give you some life gain, but it's just so hard once you're down to like 20 life to not feel like you're always about to die in Commander. So life gain's generally pretty good, especially when you're gaining like 50 at a time, which some decks can do. And red struggles with that, but red's probably my favorite color in Magic, so there are good things you can play. I talked about Duretti already. Godo has a ton of cool synergies with just being able to tutor an equipment card, things like Helm of the Hosts. Throw some Samurai in there, get extra combats. Speaking of Samurai, you have Fumiko. The second ability here is pretty great because if she's on the battlefield, she can block almost anything your opponents throw at you with her Bushido, but that's going to incentivize your opponents to attack each other instead of you. because they're not going to want to run their cool creatures into Fumiko, who can block essentially anything, because she's going to get pretty big from her first ability. So it's an interesting politics angle. I think she is pretty good influence that way. And then Hamura costs 6, which is a little more expensive, but if you have a way to play this guy and immediately get him into the graveyard, you're essentially just playing all your creatures get +2/+2 and have the fire breathing mechanic commander. Like, that's your commander, which is pretty good if you're building the right deck around it. But like I said, you need to be able to 4/4 for 6 that can't block is not good, but flipping it is good. So if you have some sacrifice outlets, Hamura can be really sweet. Green, maybe the strongest commander color. All kinds of things going on here. There are like a million different elf decks that you can make. I tried to not just do 4 different elf commanders here. Yissen, if he sticks around, being able to search up whatever creature card you need is super good if he sticks on the board. I don't love Yissen because chances are he's just going to get removed pretty quickly, but unanswered he gets out of hand quickly and can pull out all kinds of combo creatures together. It's pretty cool. Yiva, giving green creatures flash and having flash herself is just amazing. You can cast her on the end of your opponent's turn because she herself has flash, and then you can flash in all your crazy green creatures. Rishkar, great elf commander. Ways to put +1/+1 counters on things is super good. Something like Hardened Scales would play well. And then being able to tap those creatures with +1/+1 counters on them for mana, super strong. And then artifacts are very strong in Commander. Every deck runs good artifacts. So running a commander that isn't great like Glissa, but has the ability to destroy your opponent's amazing artifacts that are going to get out of hand, always having that in your command zone to have access to it is pretty good. And then moving into our 2-colored commanders, Azorius, I have an Afara EDH deck. It's one of my favorites. I think she's just great because card advantage is great. Indestructible commanders are great. She's a great body if you get to turn her into a creature with devotion, and you play a ton of creatures with flash and some counter spells and instants, and you can very easily be drawing a card on each player's turn with Afara. Bruna is maybe, like, if you don't like having friends and you want them to never play Commander with you ever again, play Bruna, because she's disgusting in a Voltron deck, which I described earlier, where you're just trying to do 21 Commander damage to people at a time. You draw some cards, you fill your graveyard and your hand with auras, and then you swing with Bruna, who just instantly becomes like an 18/18 flying vigilance lifelink indestructible creature. It's just nuts. And it's so hard to deal with because even if they kill Bruna, those auras just go into the graveyard, and then the next time you play Bruna, they come back. So if you want a target on your head the whole game, play Bruna. Hannah, in addition to having great artwork, look at how cool that is, plays great with artifacts and enchantments because you just get to recycle them back to your hand. And then Wrath is a new card from Dominaria. Flash is great in Commander, Flying's great, and then giving artifacts, legendaries, and sagas flash is also quite amazing, and there are tons of great legendaries and artifacts and sagas that you can play in a white-blue deck. Getting to white-black, Eiley is kind of like how Yahenni does everything that you would want a mono-black commander to do. Eiley does everything that you would want a white-black commander to do. Different sacrifice outlets. She has Death Touch for defense. You gain life equal to creatures you sacrifice power, so there's life gain, so it's going to be hard for your opponents to kill you. You can sacrifice creature to exile non-land permanents if you've gained a ton of life, which is just, you're sacrificing your creatures that you want to die anyway, because that's how you built your deck. You're taking care of your opponent's best non-land permanents. That's not even creatures, and it just gets disgusting. And at 2 mana, she just offers so much. Daxos is perfect in a white-black enchantment deck. Things like Doomwake Giant, Dictate of Heliod, Dictate of Erebos. because it just generates value on top of all those enchantments that you're playing. Things like Oblivion Ring, Pacifism, Cast Out. There's a great deck to be made around Daxos. Teysa, again, I try and stay away from really expensive mana costing commanders, but if you're not dead when you play Teysa, it's really hard for your opponents to kill you if they're trying to do it with creatures, because she can block all the time. She has vigilance, so she can attack all the time. She can't be blocked by your opponent's creatures, so she's great if you want to throw like a ethereal armor on her, a Loxodon Warhammer, and just be hitting your opponents with commander damage they can't do anything about. And if when your opponents swing back, she's still there to block and take down anything you need her to take down, and that anything she can't block gets destroyed and turned into a 1/1 flying token for you. So she impacts the board a ton super late in the game, so if you can make it that long, she's so hard to deal with. And then if you want to make a black-white knight deck, Ariel isn't great. Like, looking at the card, you're not like, wow, that's the most powerful Magic card I've ever seen. But being able to make white tokens in a deck that cares about knights is very nice. Being able to tap those knights to destroy creatures at will is pretty nice. So she does a lot if you want a white-black knight deck. People joke about Boros white-red being the worst commander color because it just doesn't have access to the insane graveyard things that black does, the insane everything that green does, the insane card draw and control that blue does. But it does have some cool cards, and I think you can play a perfectly fine Boros deck. If you want to go artifact themed, you have Jor Kadeen. He doesn't have haste, but imagine a scenario where you have a good number of artifacts, some artifact creatures, and you just play him, and then all of your artifact creatures that can attack, because they have been out for a few turns, get +3/+0, and can just absolutely go smashing people. Adriana, melee's just so cool, and it turns all your creatures, as long as you're attacking several opponents at the same time, into creatures probably too large to be blocked effectively. Depala is handmade for a vehicle dwarves deck, has the lord effects, make your vehicles and dwarves bigger, and draws cards for you. So super, super sweet. And then Tiana's, I mean, look at that. Aura and enchantments you control put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to its owner's hand. One of the things that sucks about auras is generally you put them on a creature, and then that creature dies, you lose the aura, but not with Tiana if she's out. So it has a kind of similar vibe to Bruna, where your auras that are awesome, when they get removed, you get them back, so you don't get blown out nearly as badly by those. And then rounding out our white colored commanders, we have Selesnya, white-green, Selvala, a fun parlay effect. Each player reveals the top card. You're going to ramp a little bit off this effect, gain some life, then each player draws a card, so every player is going to be drawing cards, so the game can get crazy, but it helps you ramp into neat stuff. Sigarda is, I mean, perfect white-green human commander. Your humans have hexproof, and more importantly, I think, in a deck that cares about humans, you can just pay 2 mana and make a 1/1 human. And a 4/5 flying creature isn't bad in its own right. Lots of these commanders, like Nazan, are pretty good with artifacts, enchantments, equipments. This is another equipment-based commander, being able to tutor up any equipment that you want, but specifically the hammer, and then your equipped creatures are able to get through easier because you're tapping creatures with that second ability. Araba, Roar of the World, was a pre-made commander that Wizards did, but if you like cats and you think that making giant creatures and then attacking with them is awesome, he's just a great commander. He affects the board with his Eminence ability without you actually having to play him. He just always buffs your cat creatures with +3/+3. Well, one of your cat creatures. And then whenever one of your cats attacks, if he is on the battlefield, you can double the power. So picture this. At the beginning of combat, you make one of your cats +3/+3. You can choose Arabo. So you make him an 8/8, and then when you attack with him, you pay 3 mana and make him a 16/16 trample creature until the end of turn, which also, in case you're keeping track, is commander damage. It's just absolutely nuts. So, and there are a ton of good cats that you can find, some cheap, some expensive money-wise, but you can definitely make a pretty sweet deck there. Moving away from white, we have blue and black, Dimir. I don't actually love that many of the commanders for Dimir. I think the first two here, Taigam and Gissa and Geralf, are my favorite. They do some pretty neat stuff. Taigam is just straight graveyard synergy. You mill yourself every turn. You get to look at the top 3 cards and draw one of them instead of drawing for your draw step. And then you can just exile cards from your graveyard to kill whatever creature your opponent has that's giving you problems. It's pretty effective. And then Gissa and Geralf are just made for zombies. You play it, you mill yourself a bit, and then you can just play a zombie creature from your graveyard every turn, which, believe it or not, zombies like coming back from the dead. There are a ton of synergies to be explored there. These other two, Vela the Nightclad, giving your creatures Intimidate is really sweet because that essentially makes them unblockable in a lot of situations. And then as creatures you control die, your opponents are going to be losing life, which is just good in and of itself, or it's great if you can combo off infinitely with this. I'm sure there are plenty of ways to do that. And then Rana, 3 mana commander, always good. And it's a way to generate card advantage. You exile your cards from your graveyard, as long as it's an artifact, legendary, or saga. You may cast those cards that are exiled, and you can exile more cards with her by paying 4 mana and tapping her. So card advantage, pretty cool in a blue-black artifact deck. So, not too bad stuff in Dimir. Izzet, in my experience, runs into kind of the same problem that Boros does a little bit, where you're just missing access to life gain. So if you're ever really scary and your opponents attack you a ton and you get down to like 15 life, if you ever get scary again, they're just going to kill you. But that being said, blue-red's probably my favorite Magic color combination, because the things you can do are just bananas. You have Mizzix here. Casting instants and sorceries gives you experience counters, and then instants and sorceries cost less for each experience counter you have. Can go absolutely bananas. Like, this is how you cast Enter the Infinite for like 6 mana. Niv Mizzet, the Firemind. If you like winning the game instantly out of nowhere and not deserving it, Niv Mizzet is one of the best cards you can play for this, because I think there are 3 or 4 cards that whenever a creature deals damage to a player, you draw a card. Something like Curiosity. You can look up Curiosity to see what I'm talking about for this effect. If you put that enchantment on Niv Mizzet, you can tap him to draw a card. He then deals the damage to a player. The enchantment makes you draw a card. He deals 1 damage to a player. The enchantment makes you draw a card. He deals 1 damage to the player. And as long as you have a way to stop that combo, which shouldn't be hard because you can just deal 1 damage to Niv Mizzet, he can do the damage to himself, and then you can stop drawing cards. You can easily go bananas with this. You can draw your entire deck. You can win with Laboratory Maniac or some other kind of crazy thing. You can just kill whatever you want to kill. You can do like 80 damage to your opponents. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Melik is one of the most popular Izzet commanders, because you just have access to the top card of your library. He costs 6 mana, so he's going to be affecting the board later in the game. But you see what's on the top of your library, and if you cast it as an instant or sorcery, you can double it. So you can see how that can get out of hand pretty easily. And then Nin's a really interesting commander. I love commanders that only cost 2 mana, because you're going to get a lot of value out of casting them. And then this ability is interesting because you can use it to remove your opponent's creatures if you really need to, but you're going to be doing a lot of damage to your own creatures, and there are cards like Stuffy Doll that there are some creatures that you like doing damage to, or you can just do the damage and draw some cards, and drawing cards is always really, really good. So Nin's definitely a cool commander. So some colors are stronger than others in Commander. I think the combination of blue and green is almost undoubtedly just the dumbest, strongest, stupidest color combination out there. Maybe if you played 3 colors and added black, you would get into the true craziest stuff, but blue-green is nuts. In Simic, you have access to things like Vorel of the Hall Clade, which doubling the number of each kind of counter on target artifact, creature, or land. You can play creatures with +1/+1 counters and make them huge, or you can play things like Grind Clock, where you mill your opponent for the number of counters on them, and you can enchant Vorel with Freed from the Real, where you pay 1 mana to untap him, so you tap him to double the counters on it, pay 1 to untap him, tap him to double the counters, pay 1 to untap him, tap him to double the counters. And that's how, in a recent game of Commander I was playing, someone just went from not doing anything to milling each of us for like 200 cards and winning the game. It was awesome. Rashmi just generates so much card advantage if you're playing some creatures with flash, some instant spells, because you can cast a spell on your turn, your opponent's turn, your next opponent's turn, your next opponent's turn, your turn. So you can be drawing lots of cards, casting lots of cards for free. Edric is another one of those cards that affects like the politics of the game, because your opponents also draw cards from attacking each other, but not from attacking you. So it incentivizes people who want to draw cards to attack your opponents, which is what you want. And then Tadiova, Benthic Druid. Green likes ramping, blue likes drawing cards. When you ramp, you draw cards. What's not the like here? She's not going to be a commander that you need to get on the board before anything cool happens, but she just generates a lot of value by doing things that green wants to do anyway. Rakdos has some pretty sweet commanders. Olivia, if you're playing any kind of madness deck, any kind of get things in your graveyard deck, you want to be able to discarding a card. You want that. She enables that. It makes your creatures hasty, makes them vampires. You can play a vampire deck here. It makes your creatures bigger. Kolaghan is perfect for a black-red dragon deck, because it's when any dragon you can... So if you have 2 dragons and they both attack, they both get +2/+0 until the end of turn. If you have more dragons, they obviously start doing a lot more than that. It affects all your creatures too, they get the bonus. If you just have Kolaghan, he's also buffing your creatures. Malfigor, just look at that ability. He's a 6/6 flyer, which is good. When he enters the battlefield, you discard your hand, and each opponent sacrifices a creature for each card discarded this way. So red and black likes putting things in graveyards. This puts your whole hand in the graveyard, clears your opponent's creatures out. You have a 6/6 dragon. Demon dragon, excuse me. It's pretty awesome. And then we have Garna the Bloodflame. Giving your creatures haste is awesome if you look at her last ability, because then they affect the board right away. And when she enters the battlefield after like a board wipe, you can recover all your creatures. She gives you a lot of options. She offers a lot in Commander. Golgari, green-black. Again, just like Simic, the green-blue combo is super dumb. Green-black is, super dumb. Very powerful stuff here. You have Gerard. He gets bigger for each creature card in your graveyard. You can sacrifice your creatures to make each opponent lose life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. This is how you like have a Primordial Hydra that's an 80/80 creature, and then you sacrifice it, and each opponent loses 80 life. And you can sacrifice a swamp and a forest to return Gerard from your graveyard to your hand, so he sticks around pretty well. If you like lands, the Gitrog monster is one of the coolest commanders you can use. He just does a ton. You're sacrificing your lands. You can play an additional land every turn. When you put those lands into your graveyard, you draw cards. Things like Evolving Wilds are great. Cards that return all land, like Splendid Reclamation, I think it's called, returns all lands in your graveyard to the battlefield. Super great in Gitrog monster. Varal's is a great sacrifice outlet. And like Yeheni, by sacrificing a creature for free, which you want to be able to do anyway, you keep him alive. And then giving creatures scavenge is pretty sweet, because if they kill your creatures, you're like, great, I'll just exile this creature from my graveyard, give another creature 5+1/+1 counters. Sounds awesome. And then Farika, 3 mana indestructible commander is always cool. And then the ability to exile creature cards from graveyards is good, because in green-black you'll likely be filling your graveyard with creatures, so it'd be good to be able to turn some of those into 1/1 black Death Touch snakes. And if your opponents are up to graveyard shenanigans where they're trying to put creatures in their graveyard to combo off, or they keep returning them from their graveyard to the battlefield or their hand, you can exile them and they just get a 1/1 snake. So Pharika can affect a lot of different things. Gruul, Omnath, Locus of Rage. Everyone plays lands. If you're playing Commander, you're going to be playing lands. Paired with things like Explosive Vegetation, Omnath can go bananas. Made for an elemental deck because of the second ability. When he or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So if you have a ton of elementals, someone board wipes, you get to do a ton of damage to stuff. Rurik Thar is perfect for a creature heavy deck that punishes any player for catching non-creature spells. Because 6 damage, even in Commander, is a ton. So if your opponents want to play that draw 2 cards spell, they better be prepared to take 6 damage for it. And then a Vigilant Commander with 6 power is pretty good for getting in Commander damage as well. Atarka is an awesome Dragon Commander if you want to go red-green. Giving dragons double strike is awesome. It also affects yourself, so at very worst, if you have no other dragons, Atarka's 6/4 double strike flying trample dragon, which is pretty strong. And then Ulrich of the Crawling Horde. When this card was released, people were pretty mad about it because it's not a particularly cool or flavorful werewolf, but it's still a pretty strong card. He enters the battlefield, you give target creature +4/+4 until the end of turn. Or when he transforms back, because this is a flip card. At the beginning of each turn, if no player casts a spell, you transform him. He turns into the big bad wolf version of him, uncontested alpha, and you can have him fight a creature. Being able to remove creatures with your commander is super great. So Ulrich offers a good amount in a werewolf deck or not a werewolf deck, either way. And I think that rounds out our list of awesome budget commanders. So if any of them grab your attention, give it a shot, go out. Commander, if you haven't tried it, is an awesome format. If you have tried it, maybe this will give you some ideas for cheap commander decks that you can start putting together and start building up your obscenely large commander arsenal, because it is an addictive format. I started off being like, oh, I'll have like a commander deck, and I don't even want to talk about how many I have now. It's an awesome format. Go out there, have fun, like this video, share it with your friends, leave a comment, tell me how in doing these videos, I'm not getting 100,000 views. I did never expect to get 100,000 views, but I was hoping that some people would tell me how these videos have affected their Magic lives. They were inspired to build a deck, and they took it to a Friday Night Magic, and they won. Or they think that I'm super wrong about a card, and that I think it's awesome and it sucks, or I think it sucks and it's awesome, and we have a conversation about that in the comments or on Reddit. I just really enjoy those interactions. So please, let me know how it goes. Let me know if you agree or disagree, because I'll get back to you and we can talk Magic, which is like one of the most fun things in the world. So thanks for watching. If you made it to the end, you're a trooper, and I'll see you next time. Have fun out there, boys and girls. That's what it's all about.